This is Orlando Sentinel Now.
Hello, it's Tuesday, June 29th. I'm Rich Pope here with Martin Comas, Scott Maxwell, and Richard Tabrew. Good topics to talk about. We're going to talk about Disney Cruise Lines, some snags they're hitting. Also, we're going to hit Seminole County and growth out there and sports betting here in Florida. So it should make for some good conversation. We're going to start here with Martin Comas, and we're going to talk about that growth in Seminole County and the anticipated boom essentially happening out by the airport. What's going on, Martin?
Well, one of the fastest growing areas of Seminole County is that area around the Orlando Sanford International Airport. And if you really want to see like an old Florida, that's really the place where it is, because you see, old citrus groves, old cow pastures, and you see a lot of hardwood trees, oak trees, palm trees there. However, the problem is that there's an airport right there, and in recent years, especially after 2017, when Seminole County built its Boomba Sports Complex right there on East Lake Mary Boulevard, this area has just really started to grow. There's a lot of developers that are wanting to build homes along East Lake Mary Boulevard. And the other impetus to this is the airport. In 2019, right before the pandemic struck and, just killed travel, the airport saw a record number of travelers at 3.3 million passengers go through their gates. And so now Seminole County is saying, look, this area is growing really, really fast. So we have to plan it right for the future. So they hired this consultant, Renaissance Planning Group, to take a look at this whole area, a 5-mile stretch between Mellonville and State Road 46 along East Lake Mary Boulevard. And they came up with several conclusions or proposals. One of them is to put warehouses and industrial around the airport. Also, the apartments really and the homes really should stay as far away from the airport property as possible. Because as Commissioners Andrea Herr and Lee Constantine said, we're just setting ourselves up for problems if we let apartments and houses go so near the airport. The other thing is I talked to 2 residents that grew up in that area along Ohio Avenue, which is just south of the airport. And they grew up there in the 1960s, and they remember swimming in that little lake, Golden Lake, which is right by the airport. And that's about as old Florida as it gets, as, just going in to beat the summer heat, just taking a dip in one of these lakes. Of course, you can't do that on this lake anymore, because in the years that followed, there's been a lot of warehouses and industrial that have popped up along the lake there. But anyways, this is really a story about old Florida and just this fast growing airport, this fast growing area, and how Seminole County wants to, just kind of plan for that growth for 10, 20, 30 years down the road.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that's going to be a balancing act, especially for Seminole County, who prides itself on being this environmental county and these green spaces. How do they work this in?
Yeah, that's a good question, because right nearby, between the airport and Lake Mary Boulevard, or just south of East Lake Mary Boulevard, is Lake Jessup, and there's a whole wetlands and environmental preservation area there. So that's another place really where they really want to plan, just limit the warehouse and industrial and commerce growth around that lake. But also the other thing is that there's still a lot of old Florida homes on the west side of Ohio Avenue. And there's Silver Lake there, which is really pristine, and the water is still very clean. And you can still go swimming there on Silver Lake. Just have to watch out for the alligators, of course. But that's one thing, like Commissioner Bob Delary brought up, is, I really want to make sure that lake stays as clean as it is.
All right, Martin. Well, you can read about his story on OrlandoSentinel.com right now. Some interesting one there. And of course, very familiar here about growth in the area. It seems to be our area just continues to grow out and grow out. And eventually it seems like it's all going to be rooftops. But we're going to move forward here to Rick Tabrew, and we're going to talk about cruise lines, Disney Cruise Lines, and their attempt to get back into operation. But they hit a snag. It looks like they had to delay a test cruise. What's going on, Rick?
Yeah, Disney was actually one of the first ships to be able to do one of these simulated cruises to try and get their conditional sailing certificate from the CDC. And they were supposed to leave this morning for a 2-night cruise, and they were just going to board about 300 volunteer passengers, aka employees, to sort of prove out that they could sail with the COVID-19 safety protocols that they have in place. They were just going to jet on over to their private island, Castaway Key over in the Bahamas, and come back. And if everything went well, then they would get their conditional sailing certificate, and then assumed at that point they would be able to actually sail from Florida, from the U.S. with a CDC's approval. But before they can go sailing, some of their crew got tested for COVID, and even though they were vaccinated, and they were vaccinated earlier in June at Port Canaveral, much like many cruise lines, unfortunately, I believe it was 5 crew members came back with positive. Now, the interesting thing is that they retested them, and they came back negative. It actually reminded me of when Elon Musk was trying to come over for the Crew 1 launch, and he was getting positives and negatives, and he didn't know. But that's the thing with testing, is sometimes you might get a false positive. Who's to say? But from the CDC's point of view, positive is a positive, and you can't sail. That's at least a 14-day delay. So they had to pull the plug on this test sailing.
As far as vaccinations on cruise lines, that's been the big conversation right now. And I know some cruise lines are going for cast members being, or crew members, I should say, 100% vaccinated. Disney Cruise Line wasn't exactly going that route as far as passengers and crew members as well.
Well, crew for everyone. They're trying to get everyone vaccinated. Now, the interesting thing about that, just, they're going for that Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is a one-shot deal because it's hard to keep a ship in, scheduled to come back in 3 weeks for Pfizer or 4 weeks for Moderna. So they're getting the Johnson & Johnson. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is not as effective as a whole as the other two, which means that even if you have the vaccine, even though it'll protect you from hospitalization and you could be a carrier, that's not to say that they are, but I think it was about 68% efficacy versus 95%. So the more people vaccinated, the better, whether it be passengers or crew. Like Disney is not requiring passengers from Florida, at least, to be vaccinated. Actually, they have no sailings scheduled until, believe it's September, except for Disney Magic over in Great Britain. Here out of Florida, they have passengers. Kids can't even get a vaccine. Kids under 12 wouldn't be able to. So they're trying to get the approval from the CDC to sail. And if and when they do, you're going to see a lot of mask wearing. There's a lot of things that they have to do as part of the CDC rules to sail.
Yeah, how's this playing out right now in court as far as it seems like courts are pretty much have their hands full as far as the state saying they should be able to sail and CDC saying they can't without approval. What's happening there?
Well, at this point, the state of Florida brought the CDC to federal court and got a federal judge to grant them a preliminary injunction against the CDC's conditional sail order and these attempts by the cruise lines to get these certificates for them to sail. But that injunction actually doesn't go into effect until July 18th. So anything to try to do for the next 3.5 weeks is going to fall under the CDC's current rules. After July 18th, it's a little unclear. And what that injunction may turn into may also adjust slightly. The court has allowed the CDC to come back. I believe they have to file by next week, sort of their retort to say, hey, well, we'll change the injunction to say this, which will maybe allow the CDC a certain amount of oversight still, even though they are not going to be able to enforce their conditional sail order restrictions apparently after July 18th. But Disney Cruise Line and the other cruise lines haven't said what they're going to do exactly when that July 18th date comes. At this point, you've got cruise lines in Miami, Port Everglades, and Port Canaveral all lining up to sail in the next 2 months. In fact, one ship already left with paying customers because they said they were going to require vaccines. And that was that left on over the weekend on Saturday, Celebrity Edge out of Port Everglades. But Port Canaveral is I was just going to say, Port Canaveral's not going to get their first sailing now until Mardi Gras sails on July 31st. So we have a bit of a wait here in Orlando.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Richard Taboo. Go ahead and read his story right now on OrlandoSentinel.com. Good update there. And, of course, more to come on that as that July 18th date hits. All right, we're going to move forward here to Scott Maxwell. So, Scott, we've been hearing a lot more about sports betting here in Florida as far as it becoming legal and The state would like to hand it over to the tribe, the Seminole tribe, to take on this, but another big player is stepping in, two of them that want to get in on the money and the pot on this one. What's going on?
Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of forward momentum to allow sports betting in the state of Florida. That is something that is already allowed in a majority of states in one fashion or another. And the reason we're talking about it now is, as you mentioned, Governor DeSantis and the legislature recently signed a new compact with the Seminole tribe. And one of the sort of interesting / controversial things about this is they have given the tribe exclusive right to control sports betting. But the strangest part about it is it would not just be sports betting on Indian land, which is really the only thing that the Indian Gaming Act allows on tribal land. It would allow the tribe to host servers on their land and then allow people to place bets from anywhere in the state, which a lot of people are saying is a little constitutionally questionable. But anyway, as you mentioned, there are other, this would give that tribe a monopoly, and there are other sports betting apps, particularly DraftKings and FanDuel, that say, no, 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 no. If we're going to have sports betting in the state, it should be open to anyone. So they are trying to take this issue to the ballot next year and let voters approve sports betting just sort of carte blanche statewide.
Yeah, and where the toss-up comes here, as far as they're trying to play in that lottery part where voters went for the educational aspect of it, and you're pretty much saying, don't fall for this. This is crazy talk.
That's exactly right. I mean, there may be reasons you want to vote for sports betting, especially if you don't want a monopoly. If you're a bettor and you want in any business, you'd like to have a choice of companies. It's usually better for the consumer, or maybe you just don't agree with the rationale that the tribe should control it statewide, even when we're not talking about tribal lands. However, I would caution anybody or nobody to fall for the belief that this is going to be for education. That is what they are saying. In fact, the name of the group pushing it doesn't even have anything to do with sports betting. It's called Florida Education Champions, because they are saying that any of the taxes raised on sports betting will go to education. Well, I don't think Floridians are going to fall for that again. We have, as you mentioned, an education lottery, and those two words are a little bit like an oxymoron in the state, sort of if a vampire had a vegan diet. I mean, we have an education lottery, but we have not bolstered education. As a matter of fact, the Sentinel did a study 20 years after the education lottery started and found that Florida's investment in education actually decreased as a portion of its budget after this lottery was up. One of the stats I found interesting is Florida ranks 3rd in America in lottery revenues and 44th in America in education funding for public education. So those two things don't quite add up.
Yeah, I would assume once like the string is pulled and it's allowed, say like the lottery, people stop even paying attention to that part of it. The more important part of it is probably how big the Powerball jackpot is, if it's a gazillion dollars. And I would assume the same would happen with sports betting. It almost just becomes like secondary and you don't really pay much attention to it.
Yeah, I think anytime you're talking about revenues on this type stuff, that is, it's really just a marketing ploy. And that's one of the questions I've posed to the groups. It's a question where I feel like I know the answer before I ask it, frankly, where I ask why you've named yourself the education champions. FanDuel and DraftKings do not exist to bolster public education in Florida. They exist to make money off sports betting, and that's what this is. But you sort of say, well, if you're going to try to pass this anyway, you want to try to persuade maybe some people who don't care about sports betting, maybe even some people who are opposed to gambling in general. So you say that some of this money will supplement education. But legislators last time, they played a shell game. Yes, the lottery money went to public education, but the money that used to go to public education, they started spending on something else. It was something like a 3-card Monty that would make a street hustler envious. So I don't see any reason why people would expect anything different to happen this time.
Let me ask your take as far as sports betting in general. You say don't fall for the education side of it, but are you for it? Do you think Floridians should be allowed to bet on sports?
Yeah, I think probably my take is I'm pretty libertarian when it comes to gambling. I mean, if you are 21, and by the way, this amendment says you have to be 21. I even have a question about that. If you have to be 18 to pick up a gun and go fight for this country, I'm not sure why you need to be 21 to have a beer or put $10 on the Bucks, who are, by the way, 6.5 to 1 odds, semi-favorites to win the Super Bowl again next year. I think it's pretty libertarian in that thinking. 29 states, I think, was the last count that have that sports betting legalized in one fashion or another. But I also think, which is the point of these guys, if you're going to have it in a state, it's good to have competition. If you have it just with one person, that's not as good for the consumer, or in this case, the better. Frankly, I think that the tribe, they should have the right to do pretty much what they want on tribal lands. I think the tribe got a little greedy and legislators got a little schemy by saying that yes, you can have the sports betting, but you can allow it anywhere. If I'm sitting with my phone on my toilet placing a bet, I'm not on tribal lands, Rich. That's the way that works, and I don't think a court's going to agree that that's happening. They argued that the server would be hosted on tribal lands, but regardless of how that plays out in court, I think these companies are saying it should be an open market.
All right, thanks for that one, Scott Maxwell. Good one right now. You can read it on OrlandoSentinel.com. And I got to say, man, you can paint a picture with words. The last thing I want to see is you on a toilet placing a bet. So don't do that to me again.
Wait, do you want to see me on a toilet doing something else?
No, I don't want to even have to put that in my mind.
I just want to be clear. Thank you. It's a day of learning for me. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Well, there you go. That's all our topics for today. Appreciate you being with us. Of course, if you like what you see and like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe to OrlandoSentinel.com. We always appreciate that. But until tomorrow, we're going to go ahead and push pause. Until next time, I'm Rich, Richard, Martin, and Scott. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Watch Orlando's Sentinel Now live every weekday at noon on our Facebook page and on OrlandoSentinel.com.